When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Join Up Dots. Join Up Dots. This is going to be a great show. This is going to be a great show because we officially are bringing the sexy men across the world together. I think that's going to be my mission in life, to bring sexy UK guys with sexy Americans and just make a sort of a new community where people can just migrate and know that they're going to be surrounded by sexiness and loveliness. And today's guy, he's so lovely looking. He could possibly turn me. If I wasn't happily married, he could turn me into a world that I've never frequented before. But I'm sure he's going to be okay with that. That's the biggest compliment I could ever give him. And he is somebody who he connected with us. And I really wanted to have him on the show because he's brilliantly in life. He's proved this, that you're never too old to start building your dream. He's an airline pilot, sailor, adventurer, and an author, and an avid listener of Join Up Dots, which always swings it, people. Always swings it. If you can say that you've listened to at least 20 seconds of me, you're coming on the show. And that, my friends, is the golden ticket, as I say, to getting on the show, to highlight your own story to the world. As he says, following a life-changing experience in my 20s, I discovered that our limiting inner beliefs often keep us tethered to mediocrity. Most people are unaware that our subconscious beliefs determine our outcomes in life, for better or for worse. When we begin to change our inner beliefs, we begin to change our outcomes. You can live the life of your dreams, people. It's easier than you imagine. I used the power of my subconscious mind to manifest a career as an airline pilot at age 49, and since then I've written 3 books, and now I know I will become a successful author and in-demand speaker using the techniques taught by Joseph Murphy, Napoleon Hill, Wayne Dyer, Tony Robbins, Louise Hay, Esther Hicks, Jack Canfield, Richard Bach, and many, many others. So is this a man who is all like woo-woo and sits cross-legged and hums to himself for 12 hours a day? No, not of course. Although the law of attraction for many has a bad reputation, this is a man who made conscious decisions, changed his outlook, and got what he wanted in life by doing the right things every day. And isn't that what we talk about on Join Up Dots? Of course it is. And so our guest went from miserable and broke, living paycheck to paycheck while working in a variety of unfulfilling jobs, to financially comfortable and happy, living on a golf course in Southern California with views to the Pacific Ocean and a wife and 2 cats. So is this something that anyone can do, or does it need a team of mentors, support, and years of training? And where do people go wrong? Is it a personal belief or trying something that others don't quite understand? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Mr. Robert Lawrence. Good morning, Robert. How are you, sir?
Hi, David. Wow, you are so smooth. I love that intro. Wow, you are a pro. No wonder you have over 500 5-star reviews on iTunes. You are a superstar.
It takes, I tell you what, I'm going to share this straight away. It takes a while to become a superstar. This is what one of the things that Join Up Dots is all about, that there's a journey on it. You didn't get to your sexy American stage overnight. I didn't get to my sexy UK podcaster stage overnight. You have to do it. And yes, you go over to iTunes and there's 500 reviews here and there's 200 reviews on the other side. But there was a starting point, and there was a starting point where only I was listening to the show and nobody else. You would have seen that in your own life, Robert. You would have seen those moments when you've been sitting in the chair looking around thinking, this life is crap. I want to change it, but how do I start? And you start by starting. Would you agree?
I totally agree, and I would even add to that, David, that I didn't even know that there was an option. You know, we're about the same age, and before the internet was out there, right? We had to go to the library, and maybe find a book, and there weren't many books out there. But I was lucky enough; I found a book by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And it really did change my life. And I understood that instead of just drifting aimlessly in life, which was what I was doing, and which I think lots of people are just drifting, hoping that life gets better, I understood that I could set a course for my life and I could reach whatever destination that I set for myself. And that's when my life changed. It was in my 20s, and it continues, you know, just like you. I know that your story, that you decided to become a podcaster. And you did it, but it was just first knowing that you had the choice, right? I mean, I think most people don't even think about their dreams because they don't believe it's possible for themselves.
I agree with you, and I think most people have no idea what you're talking about when you say a library, sir. I think they're thinking, what the hell is a library? Let's explain to the listeners what a library is. It's a big room full of books, and you have to go in there and you have to ask somebody where something is. This is kind of pre-Google, and I say to my kids now, where they go, oh, I've got this homework to do tonight, it's so hard. I go, when I was young, I used to have to go down on my bike to the local library, and I used to have to find a book, and then I used to have to use these things called microfiche that were like kind of negatives of a photo, and you moved a mouse around, not even a mouse, I don't know what it was, and then you kind of find it, hook or by crook. We live in a life now where there's opportunities all around us, Robert, isn't there? There's opportunities. We grew up in the 70s. We was pre-ET. And the kids nowadays do not know what opportunities they've got.
I know, David. Remember when we used to make a phone call and you had to stand wherever the phone was located? That's where you had to stand and hold your conversation.
Yeah.
Things are different, but I always say life keeps getting better and better, and especially with the internet, it really does allow people like me and the listeners to your show to hear different speakers and guests that you have and get this information that 20 years ago, David, right? I didn't know it was out there. And fortunately, like I said, I came upon it, probably some of the same authors that you enjoy, that really did change my life. And they had a blueprint for success, much like I know that you use as a coach. As I mentioned earlier, that I am cyber stalking you for the past couple of months. I know quite a bit about you.
Grooming, Robert. That's what we say over here. You're grooming me. Yeah, you're not stalking.
Yeah, I'm grooming you.
Yeah.
But anyway, David, I realized that my life was going nowhere. I was unhappy, working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and then commuting 2 hours. So that left no time for really anything fun. And I always say hard work's great, but hard work isn't necessarily what'll get you ahead in life. I think most of us, what we want is happiness. And we think money's going to bring us happiness, or a better car, or a better wife, or a better house. And ultimately, I think it's what you talk about every day on your show is doing what you want to do, doing what you're passionate about, doing what you love. And I would even add to that, having maximum free time as well, which is the ideal life that I've created for myself now at 51.
Yeah, and I've created it for myself as well. And the thing is, and I'm going to be talking about this on a solo show coming up soon, because I've had a lot of listener questions coming in. But I've actually learned recently by doing less and less work. Now, I'm a hustler. I'm born to work. Ever since I was a small kid, I used to go around washing cars and mowing lawns. It was always about putting myself in a position where I could earn money by effort and work. Now I've realised that the world is basically looking for the easy option. They want to have a life where they can do it when they want, do it where they want, and earn what they want. And that's how it is. So I've actually had to train myself, Robert, to become lazier and lazier by doing less and less and less on join up dots, which then gives me the skills to be able to teach people how to do less and less and less. And it's becoming more valuable to me. And it's really weird that my money is going up exponentially because I'm doing less and less and less, but finding the 80-20 principle in what I do to share with the world. The world wants to sit on a beach. They want to be looking at lovely ladies walking around with cocktails in their hands, and they want to be earning money. And once you realise you can actually do that, then it's a mind blower. But it's a mindset you've got to move through, isn't it?
It is true, David. I do agree. It seems counterintuitive that the less we work, that the better our lives become. But I agree. I worked much harder in my 20s and 30s, and I only work generally 12 days a month now as an airline pilot. And the rest of the time, I enjoy life. But I've never done better financially. I'm able to write books in my free time and do what I like, which is go down to the beach. I walk on the beach, ride my motorcycle down to Malibu. I go backpacking. I go sailing. And money just seems to come easier, and I think it's because of the woo-woo in my life that you mentioned earlier, the law of attraction. That I'm just open to money flowing to me. I'm open to good experiences and positive experiences in my life, and I think if that's what I'm looking for, that's generally what I find.
Well, let's talk about that, because the law. I'm half and half on this. Now, I've had Jack Canfield on, I've had Joe Vitale, I've had some of the big guys of the law of attraction on the show. And the thing that I have got from them is they're not woo-woo at all. These guys are businessmen. They know what they're doing. They know what they're heading towards, and they do it. And they're not sitting there humming for 12 hours a day going, I want a Ferrari, and a Ferrari turns up. What they are doing is knowing that they want a Ferrari, so making the steps for that to happen. Now, I'm kind of 50-50 on this. I love the fact that there is a guide to follow that is proven, but I don't like the kind of mystical element that it seems to have. Well, what's your point of view on it?
Well, I do agree. I believe that there is a path that does require work, and I call it inspired work, because if I hold the vision, if I focus on the goal or the ideal life, or in your case, you wanted to create this awesome podcast that you have, if you focus on that, you're going to take inspired action. You're going to take the first step, then the next step. But if you never focus, or you never visualize, or you never set that goal, you'll never take that first step. But I will add on the woo-woo part that I'm very skeptical. I'm in no way religious. But in my 20s, that life-changing event I had was that I had an experience where I felt that I was an expression of infinite source, as Esther Hicks calls it. Just like I say, a wave is really the ocean, but some people just see a wave as a wave. But a wave is the ocean. When it crashes onto the beach, it just recedes back into the ocean. And I think human beings are just like that. We are expressions of infinite source. And when we die, there's nowhere else to go, because there's just everything that's here is here, and we're here to have fun. And I think the source that beats our heart and that creates universes is the same source that allows us to achieve our dreams and goals. Because I always say, I don't know why we're here, David, but I'm pretty sure we're supposed to have fun while we're here.
And babies. That's the only reason we're here, I think, to have fun and babies. Because if we were walking around not going for the opposite sex, Robert, I have to say it in a voice like that because kids might be listening. But then the world will stop. The world will stop, and it would just be, I don't know what would happen. It would be meerkats taking control like the Lion King and just sort of walking around. So that's the only two reasons I think it is. And the problem is, and we're going to talk about your life, but you've got me all worked up here, Robert. You've got me all passionate. Okay. I think one of the things, as I've spoken about many times on Join Up Dots, but not recently, is the fact that the education system just trains us to go into a job. We're used to sitting next to people for 8 hours a day at school, being bored, and so it's a kind of natural progression. And I did that for many, many years because I couldn't see a different way of operating. And I think that's one of the things that I would like to do. I would like to take over the entire world's education system and say to people, you've learned enough reading, you've learned enough writing, you've learned enough maths. I sat there the other night doing maths with my daughter. And she's 12 years old, and she said, could you test me on this maths? And I looked at these maths, and number one, she's 12, and I couldn't do these things. And secondly, in my head, I was thinking to myself, you're never going to use this. You're never going to make numbers into 3 significant figures. I have never used this at all, and I couldn't help it. I actually said to her, Ashley, you realise I've left school 31 years ago. I've never used this once. So there's got to be a time, but I think you've learned enough of what you need to learn. Be inspired. Be inspired, be creative, be fun. And if you're somebody that can't sit still, let's nurture that ability to not sit still. You might want to go into gymnastics. You might want to, walk around. My son-in-law is the head treasurer of Google, and he's got an amazing job. And it's killing him. I've seen him become like a sucked version of himself. Where I went on to my daughter's wedding in St. Lucia, and I spent a day with him bird watching because he likes bird watching. I've never seen him so happy. And I said to him, you don't want to be doing all this treasury stuff. You want to be walking around the woods with binoculars. This is you. And I think that's where we fail, Robert. I think we put people into holes that aren't naturally good for them. And if they can find those holes themselves, then that's what we're talking about. That's when life becomes fun. We play to our skills. We're likely to put more effort into it. We get the opportunities, and ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching.
Yeah, well said, David. Like you said, we're taught to get a job. I know my father always said, we'll get good grades in school and get a job. And I know in school, I remember mostly, I've forgotten all the math as well, but I remember all the battle dates that seemed so important. I'm like, what am I learning that useless information for? But I know that you have 5 kids, and I was thinking earlier that kids all learn to talk. They just mimic by people that around them in their environment, and they learn to talk that way. And we learn so much that way, right? That's how we get our comfort zone. And I think in our comfort zone, right, our parents are usually people that learn from their parents, of course, just to get a job and work hard, go to school, get good grades. And they didn't discuss dreams or passion or bird watching. They said, this Google job, oh my God, this is great. You get stock options. Even if you hate it, stick with it 30 years. And that's what people do. And right, I was guilty of that myself. I had before I became an airline pilot, I was in law enforcement. I was not a police officer, but I arrested people on occasion. And I had a pension. And if I would have stayed there 8 more years, David, I would never have to work again. But I couldn't. I would sit there, and the clock wouldn't move, and I hated it. And I hated myself for being a sellout, because just what you said, David, is we should be doing what we're meant to be doing. We shouldn't be pigeonholed into some office job for some expectation that we believe is true for us.
And we're not sort of sitting here like missionaries. We have been through this. I spent many, many years sitting in a room on my own, creating training courses just for people to then come in, and I'd train them up, and then they'd leave, and then I'd do it again. I'd never go back. And why would you go back when you can do it on the internet and get millions of people? You can get millions. We're not just talking 15 people that look slightly bored. We're talking millions of people coming to you, and it excites me. So let's talk about you again, Robert, because that's what you're here for. Now, this feeling of being a wave and suddenly knowing that life is abundant, that is a big mindset piece. And if anyone's struggling to think about abundance, what I like to do, go onto Google Earth and look at your house and whiz up, and then see the houses next to yours and the next to you. And you've only got to do a couple of turns on the wheel on the mouse, and you suddenly think, oh my God, I could be a multi-millionaire just for selling to my street. So once you get for the whole world, you realize it's totally abundant, and whatever you're doing, it doesn't matter. Other people are going to be doing it, and there's money around. So when you had your feeling of abundance, did it sort of knock you on your feet? Did you sort of feel the energy come out of you, like, oh my God, this is a change in my life, things are never going to be the same again?
For 3 days, I did not sleep. I was trying to reach out to people to understand what had happened. It was so big. I couldn't really express what, even today, I mean, the words, I struggle with the words to describe it, but I've read so many other authors that have had similar experiences, and it's really become a philosophy for me, in that I think that there must be something which has always existed, which has no beginning and no end, and there is nothing, it is not. And I think if that's true, then that must include us. And then I think, well, why don't we know everything? And I think, well, we manifest in these human bodies because we don't know the ending to every story. We don't know if we're going to win a game of chance. We don't know the ending to the movies. That's why we come here and we forget that we're infinite sources, because here we can have unlimited, infinite new experiences. And there's an opposite to everything. It's all perfect when I think about it, David. There's life and death, short and tall, good and bad, love and hate. And I would say we know those things, so we know what we don't want in life. I would say there's war and poverty all over the world, but we don't have to live there. You just have to know it exists and know that's not what you want. And once I started living my life this way, that I am an expression of infinite source, I am created and I am a creator, and I create with my imagination, with my thoughts. And that's a powerful way to go through life. And so that's kind of woo-woo, but to me, it's not so much a spirituality, it's a philosophy, and that's the way I approach it.
Yeah, but it's not woo-woo. It's not woo-woo at all. It's just the yin and the yang, isn't it? It's
sure.
If you go out and have a great party the night before, you're going to have to deal with it the next day, and it's just how life operates. And I think once you get to the point, and the only thing that I could think that doesn't go opposite is, you were saying short and tall, madness, Trump. I think those two are sort of quite similar. I don't think there's a yin and yang in there. It's almost intrinsically connected in some bizarre way. But away from that, it's just, if you're working really hard, you're going to burn out. You've got to rest. If you rest too much, you don't get anything done. And I think once you realise that, and you realise that you can just create your life by conscious decision, knowing where you're heading and going for it, but being aware that you won't have all the answers. And that's what Join Up Dots is all about. Join Up Dots is nothing more than saying to the listener out there, at this moment that you're listening, you have lived a life of experience. You have learnt things, you have found things that you love, you have found things that you hate. You've just got to start finding those themes, those things you love, and heading towards that path. I realised that I loved talking, which is a bizarre thing to build a whole business around. But once I realised, actually, I love doing this more than anything else, the rest of it was kind of quite easy to pull together. It was knowing that thing first of all. So with yourself, Robert, obviously you've got so many strings to your bow and stuff. What would you say your theme was, the thing that you actually love doing, and everything sort of is hung on that theme?
Well, like you, I know that after you left corporate America, you did something and you were successful, but it wasn't exactly what you wanted. Yeah. And then you decided to make podcasting full time. So I had something similar where I decided to become an airline pilot. But ultimately, in my free time, am I studying aeronautics and bidding for extra trips? No, absolutely not. What I do is I listen to podcasts, I read inspirational books, I love sharing the message with people that they can take charge of their life. So I decided what I really want to do is be completely in charge of my schedule, only show up when and where I want to show up. And I thought, how can I do that? I thought, well, I'm a pretty good writer. And I believe I can become a successful author and an in-demand speaker. And I can achieve that the same way that I became an airline pilot, that I invested in real estate and found my wife, is I can just hold the vision in my mind and take inspired action, set a deadline, write down my goals. And as far as writing, I spend 2 to 3 hours a day doing that. That's my goal. Sometimes I do more, sometimes I do less. But if I just take that first step, and once I take it, I know what the next step will be. It's like when you decided to become this awesome podcaster, you didn't know how you were going to do it, I bet, but you just knew why you wanted to do it. And so that's the same with me is now that I've proven to myself that the law of attraction really does work, because it's so improbable that I would become an airline pilot at 49. But I thought, I'm so convinced that now I can go on to the next phase of my life and become a successful author and in-demand speaker. And here I am on Join Up Dots.
But let's play some words now, and then I'm gonna come back to something you just said there for a moment. But as we normally do, let's hear Jim Carrey.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
Oh, I love those words. I love those words big time. Now, one of the things you said there was when I started to become a podcaster, I knew why I wanted to do it. I didn't. Now, I do now, because when I started, it was simply, let's make money. Let's go for the ka-ching. And I can record a podcast and then people will come to it and it'll be a walk in the park. As I progressed through, I realized that money wasn't the thing that I wanted. The thing that I wanted was freedom and that ability to, as you say, control my time. And that's why nobody can get me when I don't choose to be got. Unless they're young, youthful, and they're ploughed with alcohol. No, not really, because my wife might be listening. But away from that, it's all me. It's all my control. And I didn't realise at the beginning that was my number one thing. And that is how I've managed to create a life that's successful for myself and also a podcast. Once I threw away actually, I don't care about the money. I care about the freedom, and then people want to know how I've done the freedom bit, and so that's where the money's come. It's a really bizarre way, but I do think that anybody, when you start, you kind of go, I need the money, we've got to pay the bills, and I understand that totally. which is why I always say don't quit your job until you've got an idea of where you're heading. You know, always jump off a cliff and make it up as you go down. I just don't agree with that at all. I think we all start with going, it's the money, but actually it's not the money. There's something deeper, and mine is total freedom and the ability to control my time.
Great advice, and I totally agree. I as the older I get as well, it's the time and the freedom to manage my schedule and my life. And that's where I'm most happy is, again, most people would think, oh, being an airline pilot, it's great. You get paid to fly jets all over the country and internationally. And I think, well, the night before I have to leave on a 4-day trip, I'm not really looking forward to going to work. It's a job. But the beauty is like you've done and so many people do, is we can recreate our lives over and over and over. And I say, at 60, I might become a professional circus clown or a politician or an actor, or, I can do whatever I want. Now we say, but anybody can do that. And the reason that most people don't is I just don't believe that they believe it's possible for themselves, because they just don't know any different. They're just, if their parents didn't share it with them, if their friends didn't share it with them, if they didn't hear your podcast, if they didn't pick up that right book, they don't know. And that's why as we go about our day, and I know you encounter this, I hear most people, they'll state their dream or their desire and they immediately kill it. Yeah. They'll say, oh, it's too expensive. Oh, I'm too old. And I just cringe because I'm thinking, that used to be me. It used to be me.
Well, it was never me. It was never me. I never killed the dream, but I was very good at blasting it into other people and not taking any action on it. So I believed it. I totally believed you could do it, but I just didn't. And I look back on it and I think, I can't fault myself, because I think that this is where I should be. This is absolutely my thing. But I think subconsciously I kind of knew that I needed technology to get there. Now, I'm talking sort of joining up the dots here, because my mind wouldn't have said that at all. But I think now I couldn't have become a podcaster until the technology was there. Now, when I was 16, I remembered wanting to be a radio host, and I wrote to all these radio stations and I got rejections, and I went, oh, well, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. But that kind of feeling is what I've created now. It's obviously I wanted to be a radio host, but I had to wait until I wasn't in the hands of other people. I could just do it myself. And that's what's brilliant about the internet. Yes, it is it's a horrible thing as well, because we get sucked into it and we waste time and we don't spend time with our family and all that. But you have got the ability to connect across the world globally. And whatever you think of doing, if you start plumbing into what other people are doing, which is the abundance bit as well, you can see how people are monetizing. You can see that they're making a living. You can actually contact them and say, I'm thinking of doing this. I'm in the United Kingdom. I see that you're doing a similar. Would it be okay if we have a Skype call? Would it be okay? And, more often than not, people will say, well, it's not possible at the moment, but if you want to come back sort of 3 months later or whatever. And by that time, you've done your research and you're a bit more clued up on it. But it is that ability to look around and realize that it's possible. And it doesn't matter how mad the things are out there that people are doing. I've got a lady that's on the show. She's been on a show once, and she runs skipping. Right, and I was in a shower today and I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, it still sounds mad to me. If you're listening, lovely ladies, it's a brilliant business and you're doing very well on it. But in my heart, I kind of think, I don't know how this is possible. And she gets full-grown men and women, like businessmen in New York, to skip. And we're not talking about power skipping like Rocky with a rope. Mm-hmm. They're like little girls, little 5-year-old girls. You hold hands and you skip in that kind of, little 5-year-old skippy way. And she's built a business. And she's built a business around people being able to do the skipping, throwing off their inhibitions, actually laughing at themselves because, you feel a bit stupid. And actually, saying to the mates, oh, I tell you what, I did this morning. Oh, it was such a laugh. You should try it, and it's become a groundswell. Now, I bet when she started, she thought, not possible. And everybody around her would have gone, who's going to do that? Who's going to, want to skip like 5-year-old girls when they're 47? It's a business. And it's a global business. She's got, San Francisco, New York. It's the skipper's world. But to me, that's mad. That's mad. But there's no such thing as madness, is there? There's no such thing as madness. You can do whatever you want.
Absolutely. I like to say all things must be possible in an infinite universe. That story reminds me, down on the Santa Monica Pier, there's a gentleman who will engrave your name in a grain of rice. And I think he's made a career of that. I mean, and I think about this little grain of rice that somewhere it's grown, somebody plants it, somebody picks it. You can make paper of it, you can make food, and you can make a souvenir of it. So what else must be possible?
Well, how does he do that? And how do you see it? How do you see your name on it?
I guess they have to take his name or his word for it, but I didn't shell out the $10 for the grain of rice with my name on it. But I just thought that was very clever.
Yeah, buying stars. My daughter said, "Oh, why don't we buy a star?" And I said, "What's the point? What's the point in wasting money on a star?" She said, "Because it'll be our name forever." Yeah, I bet somebody sat there and looked up at the sky once and went, "I tell you what, there's a lot of stars up there. If we sold every star for 10, and somebody went, well, you don't own them. How can you sell what you don't own? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. There must be a way around it, you know."
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And you can just do it and you can go. So with your airline pilot business, right, you're age 49, and you do look like an airline pilot, I have to say. If you were sort of saying, "Hello, Mr. Ralph, please come to first class," which no one's ever done to me, then no one ever... when you get onto a plane, I've spent all my life turning right. One of these days, I'm going to turn left. And if you turn left, you're in the posh seats. And you're standing there. Do you actually think to yourself, you know, this is brilliant? Or do you just think this was a stepping stone? I had to do this first to really build on something. I had to change my existence to something that maybe I wouldn't have thought possible, but now I'm not going to be an airline pilot for the rest of my life. I'm just going to be anything.
I think it's both. I think it's I used to visualize myself in a pilot uniform, sitting in the first officer seat of an airplane and of a jet aircraft, and then one day I was actually there, and I thought, "Wow, is somebody going to come up and drag me out of here?" Because it was surreal. But it also I feel like it gave me credibility. And so that I could launch to the next whatever goal I want in my life. Not that I needed the credibility, but part of me still felt like I did.
Yeah.
And I heard somebody say once, if you want to become an expert on something, write a book. And so I thought, well, let me start writing books. And but I was thinking too, just the other day I heard somebody say this. It's I can't take credit for it, but they say we are the star of our life. You've probably heard this. We are the director and the writer. And we can see our life as a movie, and we can, if we don't like the scene we're in, we can write a new scene. And I remember 3 years ago when I was 48 and I was at the job I hated, I wrote a new scene for myself, and that scene was as an airline pilot. And then after a couple of years, I said, let me write a new scene. I want to become an author and a speaker. And so that's just the way I look at life, David, is we are in charge of our lives, and whatever we think about is the direction we're going to go. If we think about poverty, that's probably what we'll find. And that's what I thought about in my 20s. I was always broke. I was miserable. I was unhappy.
So what were you doing, Robert? In your 20s, what was your life?
I worked for a snack food company. I would deliver snack food to grocery stores, get up at 1 a.m, literally work 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And because, again, before the internet, you probably did this too, David, we used to look in the classified ads in the newspaper for a job. And I would look for a job that paid, back then it was about $7 an hour, because I thought that's what I was worth. And I wasn't looking for a job that I really something that I wanted to do. I looked for a job that I thought I could get. And so, like most people, I think that's how most people approach life, is they don't say, hey, I love working with animals. I'm going to go work on a dude ranch or become a vet. They say, oh, here's an opening down at the Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
I think I can get that. And then they all of a sudden they're there and they wonder why they're unhappy. And so that's what I was doing. I was working hard. I was earning good money, but I was so miserable because I wasn't doing anything that I wanted to do. And it really, David, I just didn't know any different. I didn't have any confidence in myself. I didn't have any belief, and I didn't even know where to turn. But it was just a simple line in a book that said, put a rudder on your boat, set a course. If not, you're just drifting wherever the current takes you. And if you allow that to happen with your life, you'll never end up where you want to go, and you'll end up somewhere, but it may not be where you want to end up.
So what was the first thing you did then? So you're in this job that you now look back on and go, it was a bit crappy, but we've all done crappy jobs, you know. Nobody goes into anything they want. What was the first thing you did when you had these 3 days of not being able to sleep? How did you focus and make the right first step?
Well, after that, I didn't make the right step. I struggled for a couple of years after that. That wore off, and it felt like a dream. But a few years later, I did find this book by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and I wrote down my first goal was I wanted to finish college, because I'd gone to college a couple of years, but I'd moved to a different state with the intention of finishing college. But you know how that goes. Work gets in the way and so forth. So I wrote down the goal that I wanted to go to college. Now, the problem was I didn't have any money and I didn't have the time. But everything worked out because I was fired from this lousy job. So all of a sudden I had the time. And then I had been in the military. So it turned out that the military was going to help pay for college. So I set this goal and everything just unfolded, you know, but like you say, joining up the dots, at the time I was devastated that I was fired. But looking back, that's exactly what needed to happen.
It is amazing, isn't it, that the bad dots are the best things, you know, and you don't see it at the time. And, you know, once again, you know, we basically allude to this in every single episode. But when you're sitting there on your sofa and you're in your dressing gown and you haven't shaved for 4 days and you haven't opened the curtains because life is just rubbish and why is everything dreadful, you actually realise that a lot of the stuff that forces us to change, we didn't even want in the first place. You know, I remember being made redundant from a job and walking home thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself, you know. And about a day I moped until my wife kicked me into shape. And then I became a student and I decided, right, I'm not going to work. I've got enough money. I'm going to learn something else. And did it help me? No, it didn't really. But what it did teach me was that this computer program that I went on was so hard. And it wasn't my kind of brain skills. There was people sitting next to me that were just breezing it. I was thinking, how can you do this? How can you do this? But it made me realise that if I focused on something enough, I could achieve it. So I look back on that and I think that was crappy. I didn't like the course. I'd had a big kick in the what's-its from the job. My life was going nowhere, but actually that was the starting point. I think that was the starting point of me realising that actually it's down to me. And if I focus and I work hard and I keep on doing it, then I can achieve what I went for. Before then, it was always the kind of easy route I took. Oh, that looks easy. I could do that. Yeah, bang. How much you pay me? Yes. Can you double that? Yes, I will do that. But from that point of those double whammy kicks, that's when my life became under my control, really. And I look back on it and I go, great. I look back on that and say, thank you for that. God, universe, or whatever, you kicked me into shape somehow.
Yeah, I love those stories, David, because it's always something so simple too, and that's why this message that I'm a little woo-woo like we talked about, but it's something so simple like just believing that you are the creator of your life and it's up to you. And I never even thought about that before, but once I understand that and embrace it, it's like, okay, I can go any direction that I want to go in life. Who's going to stop me? The only one who's really going to stop me is me. And here's one more woo-woo story that I'll tell you is after college, I decided I wanted to move from Seattle because it rains too much there. And I wanted to move to Southern California. And everybody said, oh, you won't be able to afford it. It's too expensive. Because I was moving to Santa Barbara. I'd never been there before. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a job. All I had was $400. But I had a vision that I would find a free place to live in Santa Barbara. And I drove down to Santa Barbara. And I got there and I looked at the classified ads and there was an ad. There was an elderly woman. She wanted a man in the house by 10 o'clock each night because she felt unsafe alone in her ocean view home in Santa Barbara. So that was the next experience where the universe just laid out everything perfectly for me. And so if I would have waited for conditions to be right and listened to the naysayers in Seattle, I'd still be up there complaining about the bad weather. But I always say that, again, it's whatever's beating my heart and spinning planet Earth. I mean, if you think about that, right, the people listening to us now who are in traffic and are miserable, I'm like, just think you're on a huge spaceship that's alive with no roof on it. It's traveling thousands of miles an hour and it's rotating on its axis. it'll blow your mind. So I'm like, if that's all happening without us doing anything, surely there must be, we must be able to manifest our lives. I don't know. This makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does. I'm going to share a couple of woo-woo stories very, very quick. My previous life is coming back to me as we're talking. But I used to have a friend many years ago, and he used to be the butler for Elton John, which is a bizarre thing to do. And he used to buttle for Mr. John and do things. And he decided that he was going to become a faith healer, I think. And he moved to Sydney, Australia, and he went there with hardly any money at all. And he was telling me this story about he got there. And he said, right, I want an apartment down by the sea. And they said, well, you can't afford it. Same thing happened to him. He had a fluke and he got this apartment, but it needed to have furniture and he didn't have any money. So he wrote a list and it basically walked around the streets of Sydney finding these things in like dumper trucks and stuff, and it was actually in the order that he wrote it down, which kind of at the time I thought this is a bit mad. But then I came back to London and I met this lady, and she said to me, "Oh, come round my apartment tonight." And well, I can't tell you what happened, but we were work colleagues, and I went round her apartment, and it was oh my god, it was a penthouse overlooking Tower Bridge, right on the river. Right, it was worth millions. And I said, "How the hell are you in this? Look at this. This is unbelievable." And she had a balcony and she had like a barbecue and she could sit there and she could look at the lights over the river go down. You would never be able to afford this. And she said that she decided that she wanted an apartment and she wanted something really swanky. And she went into a bar and she started talking to someone, and the person said, "Oh, I think I can help you out there." And my friend is a South African businessman. He's got an apartment and he wants somebody to live in it just while he's away. But the only thing is, when he comes back, you've got to get out. And she was paying something like $50 a month or something for this apartment. So all the money that she saved, when he did come back, she basically moved into a hotel for like a week, and she was still quids in, and she was living this amazing life. And she just basically said that she wanted it to happen, and she went out and made it happen. Now, it still blows my mind when I'm talking these stories, but I've had enough of them being told to me now in 900 plus episodes that I think to myself, it's just us deciding that we want something and being willing to look around and notice what's coming past us. And I do believe that there is a flow. It's like a river of opportunities that flood past us. And when we are happy and when we are willing to look around and when we're willing to embrace what life's giving us, we can see it. But when we're kind of, oh God, life is crap, life is rubbish, there's nothing on Netflix, I don't know then you can't see it because you're just looking into yourself and not out. Does that make sense?
Right. I totally agree, David. Yeah, it's always there all the time. We just don't notice it. It's just white noise. And I think an example is before the Kardashians, there was Paris Hilton. You probably remember her.
Yeah.
And she had no talents that I was aware of, but she would be paid $1 million to show up at some event. And I thought, well, she grew up in wealth and privilege, and she just expected that lifestyle. And that's what manifested in her life. And I think most of us don't grow up like that. We grow up with blue-collar working parents. And we just don't have that mindset. And it seems so foreign to us to expect, good things in penthouse apartments. And I remember when I was younger, they said, go sit in the lobby of the best hotel in town and imagine you're staying there. I remember I started doing that in my 20s. I'd wear my suit I got from the Goodwill, and I had a briefcase that only had a sandwich in there. I didn't have any papers in there, but I dressed the part, and I would sit in the best hotels. And I still do that to this day, just to feel comfortable, like I belong anywhere. And what anybody has, I should have. What anybody has done, anybody else should be able to achieve. I always say, if David Ralph can become a successful podcaster, I can become a successful podcaster. Not as good as you, but you've shown the way. And I think anything is like that in life. And it's just, if we can get our head around that, we can become, like I said, a podcaster, an airline pilot, a politician, the president. It's just, what are we going to focus on? If we focus on, that's what we see. Like recently, I just bought a truck, Toyota Tundra. Now I see them everywhere. 3 weeks ago, I didn't really notice them. But yeah, now it's in my focus. So that's what I see.
Yeah, and don't aim to be the president. That's one thing I say. Just do something else. It's not fun. You just get beaten up and you come out looking 12 years older than you went in. It's not good, is it?
I'd rather be dictator just for a year. Yeah, I'd straighten everything out. Yeah.
Global domination, yes. I would take over North Korea today and just change it so that they all skip. I would love to make the North Koreans the skipping community of the world. That would be fun, wouldn't it?
I love your story about the woman skipping. I know that's getting people out of their comfort zone, isn't it? Yeah. Why don't we skip? I don't know. People will think we're girly men, but there's nothing wrong with it.
I have skipped with my daughter, and when she was about, I don't know, 6 or 7, we were walking down to our local pub, and my wife and my son were behind us, and my daughter said, "Come on, let's skip, Dad." And I went, "Come on then," and I did that girly skipping. And I felt stupid. I did feel stupid. But the more I embraced the stupidness, I could see that drivers coming along, they were smiling, and just for that moment, there was a common theme of, there's a dad with his daughter, life is good, And I actually had to overcome that feeling of being stupid, really. And that's what holds us back more than anything. And I do think that if you can go out today and you can just skip around your park, you will come back thinking, that wasn't too bad. I can do other things that's going to make me feel stupid. And it's those little things that sort of push you out your comfort zone again.
Sure. You just reminded me of, David, is our inner self-talk, right? It's just that inner voice that never shuts up, that's full of doubt and fear and anxiety and stress and worry. And I think, again, most people just, that runs through their mind and they never check it and say, wait a minute. That's not a rational thought. I mean, people who have a fear of heights or a fear of flying, I'm thinking, why do they have that fear? But they just accept it, and it keeps them frozen in place, or fear of success or fear of getting out of their comfort zone. And I don't know, just something that you mentioned there just triggered that thought in me. And I thought, now when that voice comes in my head full of doubt and, would I like to have a podcast, and immediately think, oh, well, that's too hard. I don't know what to do. You got to buy the equipment. Who's going to listen? But before you were David Ralph, I mean, you were just like me and everybody else. Now you're a big superstar. So
it's true. It's true. And the beauty of doing this kind of thing is, once I say it's on your own terms, you can do it when you want. The cost of entry is incredibly low. It really is. And all it is a desire to upskill yourself and become better and realize that actually it takes a while. At the moment, my audience is going up exponentially. It's unbelievable. I don't promote, I don't do anything, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which once again ties into my desire to create a life under my own terms. I love podcasting, but I didn't like doing all the other stuff. So now I've created something that's just operating on automatic pilot, and so that I can do the other stuff, and just enjoy my life. It's all about being intentional and going for it. As this guy went for it, and I'm going to play the words now because he became the whole theme of Join Up Dots. And let's hear his words again. Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
The question that's going to come. He's a legend in so many ways, and the story of his life is just sort of phenomenal, how he got to where he is. So when you listen to that, as I ask everyone, so the question that's going to come up, what is your big dot? Your big dot on the Join Up Dots timeline, when you look back and you go, actually, I think that was when everything started to go my way.
Probably when I got fired from this job that was paying good money, but it was filling vending machines. And I remember the feeling, I'm thinking, how am I going to pay rent and what am I going to do? And I was full of fear. But from that fear, it propelled me forward to the next phase of my life, where one door closed and another door opened. And like we mentioned earlier, as I look back now, that's exactly what I needed to finish college and to really get me out of my comfort zone. So I was definitely uncomfortable, but it was being uncomfortable and being fired, which was the best thing for me, because, so many people, I think, they stay in the jobs they don't like because they think, what am I going to do for income? But there's millions of jobs out there. But right? I mean, why would say when people first came to America, the settlers, there were no jobs. It's something you create, like you created Join Up Dots. There was no Join Up Dots company that you applied to. You just created it. And I think we're all able to create our lives. And you've got right now, I'm so jealous because you have what really everybody wants. You're in control of your schedule and your time, and you have a great income. Yeah. It's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And it does blow my mind when you say that. It's almost like this has created itself, and I know it hasn't, because it's been me doing hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. But I look back on it and I think to myself, it actually wasn't that hard. Even though I've had burnout twice, and I look back on certain things, I think, I could have made it just so much easier for myself. It actually wasn't that hard. If I had to go back and do it twice as hard to still get to where I am today, I'd do it. In a heartbeat, I would still do it. And I think that's the difference. When your passion comes together with control, and control comes together with money, and money comes together with opportunity, you realize that it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. And no matter who you are, I have never found a job that I am willing to do as much as I'm willing to do now, in the risky state that it could be taken away from me the day before. Do you know what I mean? When you create your own environment, all your efforts will build to something, and all those efforts are yours. But going into building somebody else's dream, if they change their dream, then you're out. And it just seems madness to me.
I love that you built your dream, and that your dream affects so many people in a positive way. I mean, that's fulfilling, because I think in the times years gone by when I said a word of encouragement to somebody, and 5 years later they came back and they say, "Hey, Robert, just want to let you know how I'm doing, and I really want to thank you for believing in me." And that was just one person, and you've got millions of people out there now listening to your message, and it's great. And I remember before podcasting, I was a talk radio junkie. Now I'm a podcast junkie. Join Up Dots.
Yeah, I don't actually listen to podcasts, funny enough.
Really?
It's one of those things. I record, and that's it. I don't listen to anyone's podcasts. It's I should do really, to see what's going out there. But I like to have a life. I like to have a life and be down the pub having a few drinks, watching a bit of soccer, and I don't get that by listening to somebody else's mad ramblings. So, Robert, this is the end of the show now. This is bit we've been building up to. We've been intentionally focused on this, and it's the bit that we call the Sermon on the Mic, when we're going to send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back in time and speak to young Robert, what age would you choose and what advice would you give? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to play the theme, and when it fades, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
All right, Robert, you're 22 years old. You're just out of the military. You've challenged yourself mentally and physically. And here you are. You're back in the civilian world again. And what are you going to do? Well, sadly, you're going to waste several years of your life, because you haven't learned yet that you're full of the same doubts and fears that 95% of the people around you are filled with in their heads. But it doesn't have to be like that, that you can create your life. You can fake confidence until you have it. You can sit down and think about what you're passionate about, and then write down your goals and take inspired action. Take a step towards your goals, and don't compromise. Don't sell out. Don't do anything for money ever. Money will flow. You'll never live in the gutter. There'll always be somebody who'll give you a bed or a couch to sleep on, and life's going to work out. And mostly, young Robert, Don't stress and worry, because all the stress and worry that you'll ever have in your life will get you exactly where you are right in this moment. So it's useless. And just believe in yourself, and just know that what other people have said, the people who've reached great heights of success, said dream big and then dream bigger. And it's true. They're sharing the message with you, and believe it, because it really works.
Absolutely.
That's my message. Yeah.
It's a good message, and it's a message for all of us. So, Robert, what's the number one best way that our audience who've been listening to you today can connect with you, sir?
Probably my website, a muchbetterlife.com, or my books are available on Amazon, of course. My latest book is A Day in the Life of an Airline Pilot by Robert Lawrence. And I've got a couple other books that you can see there. And vegetarianpilot@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your stories.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, and connect with Robert, because you won't realise this at the moment, but it's about, 1:45 in the morning. Is it your time?
Yes.
Yeah, it's 1:45 in the morning. He's still on full flow. He's passionate, and he's passionate because he's doing something that he loves. So if you think to yourself, God, I'll be on my knees by that time, then you're doing the wrong thing. And that is one of the sort of messages that I would get to everybody. If you are coming home from a day's work and you're absolutely exhausted, more often than not, it's the wrong work you're doing. Energy is being sucked from you instead of being put back in. Fair enough, Robert?
Fair enough. Life goes by fast. Yeah, make the most of it. Have fun.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our past is the best way to build our futures. Mr. Robert Lawrence, thank you so much.
Thanks, David. It's an honor, privilege, and you are awesome.
What a great guest. What a great guest. Mr. Robert Lawrence, who connected with us by email and came on the show, and his passion, it just shone through there. It shone through on the email that he connected with us. That's why we invited him on the show. And it just shone through there. 1:00 in the morning, he just wanted to deliver, but it wasn't forced. It was just how he felt. It's just how he felt and how I felt. And so if you're not listening to that show and being inspired that from today, from this moment, you can choose the direction of your journey. You can decide on what you want to do and go for it. And it doesn't matter if it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years. As I say, Join Up Dots is coming up to its 4th anniversary in April next year. And I would say now is really where the show is going big time. So I've had 3 years of building up to this. Would I do that again? Because the rest of my life is going to be Join Up Dots land. I can do anything I want. Of course I would. Of course I would. So if you've got time, and even if you haven't got time, you've got a life to lead, and you can start now. And whether it takes a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, but the rest of your life is exactly as you want it to be, then it's got to be worth it, isn't it? It's got to be worth it, people. Anyway, I feel all inspired, all passionate, all infused. I'm going to go and chase the wife around with a wet flannel. She likes that. She likes that, And until the next time, I will see you again soon. Cheers. See ya. Bye-bye.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.